everyone, and welcome back to the Press Break podcast. I'm Chelsea, and of course, I'm joined by Jamie and Tyler, and we are here to get right into our college basketball era. The season started yesterday as we're recording this, and when you're hearing it on Wednesday, more games will have happened, but there was so many yesterday that we had a lot to watch and a lot to talk about. So a few highlights, I guess. There were so many games yesterday. There were games in Paris, France. There were games here in North America. There was ranked teams, unranked teams, all of that playing. We had some big performances that we'll get to, some big games that we'll get to. And then we'll kind of go over a few individual performances, talk about what we're looking forward to for the next week. There's literally games like every day, every other day, especially weekends are big in college basketball. So this is your spot to check out all of your college basketball recaps. So we're really excited to get into it. And let's just dive in. I mean, there were so many teams playing yesterday, ranked teams, unranked teams. The one that I was really looking for, and we'll start with our, just like highlights or biggest takes from yesterday. For me, the one that I was really looking at was South Carolina, ranked number 1, playing Michigan. And Michigan is currently unranked. I personally think that might change next week or in the coming weeks, maybe. But I think the biggest thing for me as I was looking at all of the scores of ranked teams who were playing unranked teams is that there were a lot of blowouts. But when you think about this undefeated South Carolina team since now, like the 2023 tournament, I expected, and maybe a couple other people expected this game to be a little bit more, of a blowout, like some of those other ranked versus unranked teams. And it was an incredibly good and close game. And I mean, we're going to get into players later. And obviously, that I have a certain player that I'm going to shout out. Hashtag Canadian. But I think the main thing that I took away from that game, other than the individual performances, was how shocked I was at how close it was and how good. And I don't know if that's a Bennett like me just maybe thinking, oh, like Michigan's a lot better than they're currently being ranked since they have so many new players. Maybe that's, South Carolina is now missing Camila Cardoso. They have a few different kind of players on that team and, some newer, some shifting going around in their lineups. But I was really, really shocked. And it was a great game. And so, definitely not worried about South Carolina in any aspect.
Not yet.
Nothing like that. Or whatever. But that was really enjoyable for me because in a game that maybe a lot of people expected to be a blowout ended up being a really great game. And obviously another highlight for me was the USC game on ESPN. They played fantastic. And, there was a few, obviously, like first game.
I got some thoughts.
Yeah, there were first games for such a new roster coming together with so many freshmen. You expect that. And in the end, they got the win. Juju played really well. So, I mean, again, we'll get into Juju. We'll get into all of that. But I'm curious what, Tyler and Jamie, your biggest takeaways, highlights, or anything you want to note from yesterday were. I know, Jamie, you were at one of the games, ISU, of course, and obviously you guys get to watch a little bit more than I do because, I'm in Canada and it's hard to watch them. So curious, we'll start with Jamie. What'd you take away from yesterday?
Yeah, so my biggest takeaway that I wanted to highlight right off the bat is something that I've talked about quite a lot sort of since the portal era began, and that is how underrated the importance of consistency is. And, so many people talk about, oh, well, you can just transfer wherever, and oh, this team picked up so much in the portal, blah, blah, blah. You still need time to mesh as a group, no matter how talented you are, no matter what your experience is. You still need time. And so it's impossible to replicate that time in any other way than spending the time together as a team. And so when you get these teams that are predicated on a lot of newcomers, whether that be from the portal or freshmen, there's going to be growing pains. And so I think that was especially evident with USC on day one. I thought that there were some things that I really was hoping would be different in that game for them. I wanted to see more of their depth. Obviously, I get not throwing freshmen into the fire immediately against a really talented Ole Miss team, especially when this is a heavily defensive oriented team. But to get really nothing out of two of your starters and Brian Marshall not scoring, Talia von Oelhoffen only having 2 points. Again, I completely understand the adjustment period, but I think that that's a little bit underrated as far as how these teams are perceived, how they're talked about to start out the year. I wanted to see more ball movement. I wanted to see more from the supporting cast. The whole point with Juju is that she can become more efficient. She can be better when some of that load is off of her shoulders. And Coach Yo came in and was telling the media, was saying in interviews, yeah, our plan is to make Juju think that she has to beat us herself. That's the kind of defense we're going to play. And that's what ended up happening. You know, they won, but barely, they barely eked it out. And so I wanted to see more better decision making. I wanted to see more ball movement. And ultimately that comes down to her teammates giving her more of a reason. It reminds me a lot of Caitlin Clark at Iowa, where they were at their best when the entire team was involved, when the ball was moving, when it wasn't Caitlin having to do everything all the time, when she really could distribute and then take her shots when she wanted to. So I really am looking at that kind of across the country, because you see that in the UCLA game as well. Having those injuries was super impactful. Having Kiki Rice out was really big. And then having Leger Walker, who is a transfer but is a great guard. Also a reminder that post passing needs to improve pretty much across the board. To have Lauren Betts be the leading assister on that team with 5, first of all, props to her. Great work. But unacceptable for everyone else. Figure it out. It is not solely on your point guard. Get everyone else ready to enter the ball inside. So that was really disappointing to see that hasn't improved for UCLA, because that was a massive issue last year. And with how dominant Betts is, that should be better. Beyond that, injuries. Woof. Notre Dame has 7 total players.
They got a starting lineup on the bench right now.
That's yikes. Bottom of the SEC, yikes.
Hey, yikes. Emphasis on yikes for the bottom of the SEC. Some of those losses, yikes.
Number 13 in the SEC, Texas A&M, lost at home to Texas A&M.
I got that pulled up right here because I was going to point it out. What in the world?
Mizzou, number 15, lost at Vermont by 16 points. Number 16, Arkansas, lost at home to Fairfield. However, that's an indication of why no one schedules Fairfield. Props to Arkansas for even scheduling them.
Yeah, I can't even hate on that one. The other 2, you get your act together. That's ridiculous. You are look, as someone who is now in the SEC, it means more over here. And I need people to act like it.
Allegedly.
I need people to act like it. Because Corpus Christi, you got your cousin university beating you? Like, what are we doing here? That's not even your sister or sibling. That's your cousin. What are we doing? So that's brutal.
That should make Corpus Christi the new Texas A&M with no, like,
what are we doing?
After.
That's crazy. So I didn't mean, if you
nope. By all means, it's yours.
Well then let's get into it then.
Yeah, because, go for it, man.
I have a lot of similar thoughts to you across the board. One thing I did want to point out, because I have thoughts on both the LA teams. One, I'm willing to bet, pun intended, about bets that at least 4 of those assists were to Tamia Gardner. I mean, it's a no shock because we saw Gardner alongside Reagan Beers. And just being able to space the floor and rebound. And that's all you're really asking her to do if you're UCLA. Space the floor, grab some boards. We're chilling. And it was perfect. It's exactly what you wanted to see from that.
For her, basically no notes from me.
Yeah, no, like that 100%. And I say one thing I loved from Betts, and to your point about the guard passing, is at least once, maybe twice in the game, the one I'm thinking of, she got a 3-second violation. And she was like, I forget who was up at the top of the key, but she was like, give me the ball. Like, my numbers are showing. And I loved seeing her just, like, nothing crazy or nothing, outlandish, but like, telling her teammates to give her the ball.
Yeah.
Because give her the ball. Issue. Absolutely. And that's something, like, I love to see from Betts because the talent is obviously there. The size is obviously there, but just the mentality aspect of that, not that she's been lacking it in the past, but just to outwardly see that is super, super encouraging to me. Also, Olivia Miles, triple-double off rip 20-10-10. Let me tell you right now, I think what might end up being Notre Dame's biggest, I guess, like best quality in a way, is the way that Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles can rebound on the defensive side and immediately change it into an offensive possession. You don't have to wait for the pass. You have rebounding guards, and you got players like Liatu King that are running the floor, and they are very capable of making those passes or just going to get the bucket on their own. And just the simplicity of that for Notre Dame and just the ease, especially while they have players out, like just making the game easier for yourself is massive. And that it's a simple thing, but those seconds where instead of the post passing it to the guard and instead it's just the guard going means so much when it comes to the defense getting back. And so that really stood out to me about something that might end up being just such an easy, whether it's turnovers from the guard position. We know what Hannah Hidalgo can do on the defensive end, and Olivia Miles is no slouch either. Or if it's just getting rebounds and just them getting the ball on their own, that's going to be massive for them.
Yeah.
Now, USC. Look, man, when we talked about the All-American list, there was no notes. You got 2 of the top 5 players in the nation. Not only that, but that's not something that happens when it comes to the All-American list. That's not something that happens. And at no point, and some of this is certainly credit to Ole Miss. So at no point in this, I don't want to discredit the defense of Ole Miss. I don't want to discredit that.
Great defense.
However, on the flip side, I didn't feel like USC did anything to make their life easier in the sense of, I don't know, like off the top of my head, I can't recall a single pick and roll bucket between Juju Watkins and Kiki Iriofin.
I feel like Kennedy Smith might have had
maybe, but not between your 2-star players that we've been hearing from the entire. Like, we did an interview with Kiki on No Cat Space about her transfer and everything, and part of the excitement was, hey, you got to choose. It's either Juju or Kiki, and you're on a pick and roll, and you got to choose. And it never really felt like we got that, and in a way where it's like just let the 2-man game play. And I think part of it, obviously, you don't say no to getting Talia von Oelhoffen and Kiki Iriofin. You don't. Like those are incredible players to bring in from the portal. However, I think people may have underrated the way that Juju was able to have the floor spaced out for her with the Ivy transfers from last year and just be able to kind of do her own thing in the mid-range, especially kind of like in between the 3-point line and the paint and operate from that. And we saw Juju have to be a playmaker in a new way that honestly, and obviously it's just first game, so it's not, these aren't like grand conclusions that are official, but just off the analysis from the first game, I thought Juju's playmaking would come a little bit more natural. And it didn't really come off like that in that way. And obviously freshman transfers, Jamie, to your point about just having, just teams that have been together and everything. So by no means is this the finished product of USC. I just expected a little bit more well-oiled offense in the half court, just based on even at some points, you got more talent than the other team.
Yeah.
And that never really shined through for me in a way that I had anticipated that it would for USC off rip, where even if the chemistry wasn't all the way there or anything, the talent would carry them far enough where it's like, hey, Kiki, it's your turn. All right, Juju, it's your turn. And kind of working that way a little bit.
To me, it was kind of the decision making where there's times I'm catching up on everything from yesterday. First of all, as we mentioned last week, 165 games. Of course, I was calling one of the very early ones. Yep. So then that was like a big chunk of my day. But I was watching that game today and I'm watching Juju dribble into a triple team at the hoop and then forcing the shot up where she doesn't have the angle. And it's like she can make tough shots, but the whole point was that she wasn't supposed to have to do that in that case. That she could take advantage of going one-on-one. And if she gets doubled, tripled, you dish it off to someone else that's so capable. And so it just feels like that trust, that connection isn't quite there yet. And that's not they don't trust each other as people. No. Again, it's like an instinctual thing, and that's going to take time to come along.
Yeah. It's weird to me too, because last season, it never looked, generally speaking, it never looked difficult for Juju. Everything just came so simple to her, it seemed. And I think that's part of why I had the assumption of just it's gonna work, and it'll be fine. But I just think that there's more growth than anticipated, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently or anything. It's just a different bar, I guess, to kind of be at the beginning than maybe we had anticipated with that, because it just looked difficult for her in different ways.
I mean, we're saying all of this, and meanwhile, like, both of them had fantastic individual games. Like, Juju scored 27 points.
Yeah, but the turnovers from Juju, it was just
certainly
not to downgrade because they certainly did put up points. I know Kiki had ended up with a double. So, like, obviously, these are still two of the, at worst, top 5 players in the nation. So it's like that's shined through, and you could see, like, oh yeah, like that play from Kiki or that play from Juju. You're like, oh, they're one of those ones.
But to me, it just kind of screamed. It screamed a little bit like that lack of consistency, that lack of experience playing together, as opposed to like, oh, it looks like she's downgraded from last season.
Oh, right. yeah. No, nothing in that. It's just a different Juju, to no fault of her own, wasn't asked to play make last year.
No, exactly.
It's just a new thing for her.
Yeah.
And like, it's also the Ole Miss effect. Like, they make your life 100%. Difficult. Like that's a tough team to face right off the bat 100%. When you have a very new group.
You know what sounds... I couldn't shake this while watching the game. A freshman in a starting role, several star transfers, a really great, highly rated player that is your star player that you play through, and they're now adding pieces around. That sure sounds a heck of a lot like Colorado LSU last year.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And the only thing Ole Miss was missing was a Frida Foreman putting up 27 points.
Yep.
They just didn't have the scoring. But when it, like I could not shake the similarities.
Yeah,
obviously
that's a great
word, but like it's just in similar in essences, and we saw that it was a little bit difficult for LSU to really kind of mesh those things together. I mean, to the point where HBO isn't even on LSU anymore, and I have more confidence, honestly, in this roster build compared to LSU roster build from last year. So I don't think it's a 1-for-1 likeness, but it's just something that we have seen before, and it's kind of new things that we're seeing as the transfer portal is still relatively in its infancy. So we're still kind of seeing these transfer super teams come together in a new way, and really this is only the second true one like that, with LSU being the kind of heralded as the first. But yeah, USC, like I said, I'm not like pulling fire alarms or anything. We're just at a different level than I had anticipated to begin with. And it might have just been the first game. You get that out the way. You're playing overseas. You're playing a great defense in Ole Miss. That is going to be one of the best defenses you see. It's probably going to be a great game come March for them in just the mentality aspect and everything. So I'm not like overtly worried or anything. It's just a different foundation and starting point that I had anticipated that I fully expect will get ironed out. It's just different than what I had anticipated for them. And yeah, that was long-winded on USC. But other USC though is also interesting to me.
Yeah,
South Carolina, they don't have a. Let me say this right now. By the end of the season, this could be completely false and untrue. Last game against Michigan, for the first time in a decade, South Carolina didn't have a dominant post-up big. For the first time in a decade, since Asia Wilson.
Literally.
And there's been a succession of this. They've had the avatar of All-American centers in Columbia. And it's not to say that Joyce Edwards can't go into that, or can't grow into that. Right. But for the first time, we saw a South Carolina team, because even last season, they shot the three, but they weren't three reliant. It was an accessory to Camila Cardoso. Mm-hmm. For the first time, it kind of feels like we might be seeing a South Carolina team that is reliant on the three ball as like their main means of scoring, just because they don't have that natural dominant back to the basket big. Now we saw Chloe Kitts was able to eat on the boards, and obviously they still have talented bigs that are going to be producing. Mm-hmm. But in the natural way that we have seen South Carolina succeed for essentially a decade, and win national championships and have number one draft picks and have like lottery picks, like it's just going to be different this year. And it's interesting because it's the foundation of South Carolina has always been one. It used to be they don't even really shoot threes, and then last year it became if the threes aren't falling, we got Camilla, so you're okay. You feel you have that safety net. We saw with this Michigan game what they were missing was that safety net, where they couldn't really have a big that you could play inside out with or go to when the shots aren't falling. So just going forward, I'm interested in seeing the reliance on the three ball for South Carolina, just because it might just be a different formula for South Carolina that we literally haven't seen probably ever for a Dawn Staley South Carolina team. And at least until like I said, I keep wanting to mention it because this is all just game one observations. So like this could be completely wrong in 2 weeks, but as of now, from what I saw in that game, we really might be seeing a completely different formula for victory. And South Carolina can certainly do that. They have the talent to do that. It just might be in a different way than before, which is something I'm really interested in monitoring going forward.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And obviously something, because I was watching that game closely in highlights or whatever, was a lot of that. Obviously, Chloe Kitts played amazing, but a lot of Michigan, they were scoring most of their points in the paint until like the third and fourth quarter. And that was because I'm pretty sure they saw that opportunity of the fact that you don't have a Camilla and Aaliyah or an Asia down there like South Carolina has for the last, like you said, 10 years. So yeah, that's super interesting to know. And another thing that I know this was a few minutes ago, but you two, when you get into like the little colleges that I have absolutely no idea where they are, and I feel like we could play a game of like, is this?
We might have to like put it on the map, like pin it, like
put it on the map. Or I feel like we could play a really funny game of like, is this a real college or did we just make this up?
Oh yeah,
because like you're throwing out these names, and I'm like, I could not tell you where that is in the world. So it's very fun to like learn about all these little conference things. And obviously right now we're non-conference stuff. So that's not as like applicable, but just to note that I just like sitting here watching you two throw out these like names and stuff. Man, I'm into it. A couple things that we didn't know were big from yesterday. Obviously South Carolina did end up winning, but it was 68-62. UCLA got the other win in Paris against Louisville. Notre Dame obviously got a big win. LSU won, Maryland won, Iowa State won. Addie Brown had a great game.
She did.
9 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, and 5 blocks.
One of the most underrated players in the nation.
In 23 minutes.
One of the most underrated. Can I pause real quick on a super quick point? Louisville. Yeah. For how many freshmen they played, they looked incredibly competent.
And like Jada Curry being hurt.
Yes, like they for the amount that they had to rely against it. Obviously UCLA was missing some players too, but that's still an incredibly stacked roster regardless. Louisville looked incredibly competent, and that's a team like Taj Roberts was getting buckets, was hooping. But that's a team that and for me, for them looking at kind of like the 3 big games of yesterday, it's like Louisville and Michigan look like teams that I don't want to see what they mature into in the end of the season. When March Madness comes, if they're able to make it, and I'm sure there's going to be hiccups along the way, I fully expect that. But these are 2 really, really good coaches that know how to get the most out of their players. Like those are 2 teams that I cannot wait to see just how they generally develop. Because even though they lost those games, so many positives to take away from.
100%. And I feel like people are like really like sleeping on Michigan's recruiting class. Like they recruited.
I think freshmen across the board because the bar that was set from last year's like class, like the bar was set so incredibly high. Which I mean, for all I've ever seen of the best freshman class that my eyes have ever laid, they got upon. So like they understand we set the bar high, but there's incredible freshmen still in this class, like from down the board. So I'm excited to see what they do.
Yeah, so great note because Louisville was a great W. Florida State won, Kentucky won, Oklahoma, shout out. They got the dub.
I saw Reagan Beer shoot a 3. I was like, Jenny Baranchek, what if? Oh my goodness! Like,
I had to shout out that one because I knew you'd appreciate that.
No ranked upsets,
no upsets. So every ranked team got the dub. Stanford also got a dub. They're not ranked currently, which is, different from past years.
Weird,
And then, I think we've touched on most of the big performances. I did want to take a little Canadian heritage moment here, which neither of you know what a heritage moment is. So, my Canadians will understand. But basically, a heritage moment in Canada is they used to make these commercials that were like a minute long, telling like a Canadian story. So I'm going to take my heritage moment here. Because Canada... Here's the thing about, I'm going to like slightly have beef here.
Ooh,
we have some of the most talented players coming out of Canada that we have ever had, coming into professional leagues, college leagues. And the fact that the media here is kind of sleeping on it is really frustrating. And so, of course, because I have somewhat of a platform to talk about it, I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to give them their flowers because they all deserve it. And so... little bit of a rundown of how the Canadians did yesterday. Of course, having to start with Syla.
Hey, man. Fearless. fearless. Like that was my biggest takeaway from her was just like that is a girl who was playing against grown women. Like that is
that is an Olympian at 18. Okay?
Like that is a bro. Crazy.
I felt proud. I felt vindicated.
I believe it.
I was like, I've been praising this girl, and don't get me wrong, she's always deserved it for like a year because she's been playing so well against players who are much older and more developed than her, but then goes into her first college game against the top-ranked team in the country, the defending champions, puts down 27 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and just like goes off, like was shooting threes, was getting in the paint, was just like and again, fearless, like absolutely fearless. And she was getting definitely a lot of hype from like, you know, the American sites, and a lot of Canadians were watching. And I do like love that she picked a school that is so close to Canada, because I feel like that's going to like bring a lot of Canadians into the like realm. And it's like a little bit closer to where she's from. She's from Sudbury, which is like really up north in Ontario. And I was just like anything that I expected, she like blew out of the water. And I was just so proud. And I was like, you know what? Had to give that. Of course, the other freshman that we've been talking about a lot is Toby Fournier on Duke. Duke won. She came off the bench for Duke, played 10 minutes and scored 10 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, and a block.
That turnaround jumper looked nice.
Oh, the fadeaway?
The turnaround jumper looked nice.
Yep. That's something I know she's been building for the past few years, because you know she only started playing basketball. I think she was 14 when she started playing, so a little later. And obviously, being so tall, she was kind of like given that like post role immediately. And so I know over the past few years has been working a lot on her like shooting game and like working a little bit outside the post and such and such. So yeah, and then I was going to mention the fadeaway jumper and also the huge block she had on the other end that led to, them getting a bucket. I was like, wonderful. All you can ask for your freshman, debut as well. And then there's a Canadian on USC, Avery Howell. She didn't play as much, but got 3 points, 1 rebound. So that was great, especially from a USC offense that looked a little bit staggered. And then, of course, Cass Prosper on Notre Dame started and scored 17 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 2 blocks. He's also an Olympian, went to the Olympics this year in 2024, is now, I believe, a senior, but has been injured for the past 3 years. So it's really nice to see her back and playing really well. Marissa Russell on Louisville, again, had like a pretty solid stat line, 2 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and a block. And then there was Shide Wilson, who now plays for LSU, and she got 6 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 1 steal. So those are the big Canadian highlights for yesterday. There's more Canadians playing today. There was also a lot of Canadians doing really well on the men's side as well. I don't have the exact numbers, but they were all over my social media as well. And then RJ Barrett had a great game for the Raptors. So yesterday was a great day for Canadian basketball. Oh, Canada. At one point, I'm just going to get a big Canadian flag.
You have to at this point.
Yeah, just to nail my point home, it's really hard here to keep up with women's sports and women's basketball. And we just got to keep yelling so that these companies here or whatever, or the media or whatever, start getting on this, because we're going to have a WNBA team here in less than 2 years. And the people got to know what's going on in college. These players now are going to be the Toronto WNBA players in however many years. So we're just
let me know who I need to boo.
Who I need to boo.
Let me know.
Yep, exactly. So shout out to the Canadians. And now going into opening day's done, those 165 games, there's still so many teams that are so good that we haven't even seen play regular season hoops. UConn is a big one. And so going into the weekend, we'll start with Tyler because I started with Jamie last week.
Yeah.
What's a game that you're looking forward to?
I'll tell you right now, I will be in Charlotte for Allied Tip-Off. I will see NC State versus South Carolina.
That's a good one.
And I am incredibly excited about that. I mean, it's a doubleheader, so Virginia Tech and Iowa, while obviously not the ranking matchup, I'm also really intrigued by that game. It's just new looks across the board, really, for both teams. So I'm just really interested in seeing what those teams looks like. But I mean, NC State, South Carolina in Charlotte. Like the energy should be great. The basketball should be great. That's where, like, I'm really genuinely interested in figuring out, like, NC State is a team that kept a lot of the same pieces. You know, like there's certainly some changes, but like Sinai Rivers is still leading the way, and like their means to an end is still very similar from last season. Obviously the Final Four rematch from last year.
That was such a good game.
Oh, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to be there in person for it. And get to be able to. I'll be covering it and everything. So, really excited for that. And really, like I said, just to my point about South Carolina and just the process and way and the way that they win. That's what I'm looking for. Is like, is this was the first game just the first game, or is this gonna kind of seem like a trend? And so that's gonna be my biggest thing I'm looking for. And NC State will play later tonight on Tuesday, so I'll get our first eyes on them. So we haven't seen them play yet, but like I said, maintained a lot of last year's production and everything, and I think I'm excited to see like Zoe Brooks, for example, as a player that now has more time and more reps under her, as a player that can even step up a little bit further. But yeah, super excited to see them from NC State, just kind of the first time we're really seeing them, and South Carolina, just to see if the 3-point shot seems like option number one for them this season.
Yeah, I agree. Another one that I'm really looking forward to is UConn plays on Thursday, I believe. And obviously Paige Becker is coming back is huge for them. But they also got Caitlin Chen out of the portal.
Oh, I love
a few people coming back from injuries. I know Janelle Alfie was out last year with an Achilles tear, I believe. And now she's finally getting like her freshman season. So they have a lot of like exciting even the freshmen from last year, like Akar Arnold and Ashlyn Shade, like they stepped up huge for UConn when they were super, super injured last year. And it's also, like you said, like a new team. Like they have a lot. They lost Aaliyah Edwards, which is huge. They lost Nika Mule, which is huge. And so I'm very curious to see how like Gino decides to,
make some. And they still got injuries too. So like there's still players like on.
Easy Fudd probably won't play. Caroline Duchamp probably won't play. So yeah, there's definitely people like. There's a few that team's going to evolve as the year goes on, but I do think it's a huge expectation this year because it's Paige's last year. It's probably last year, and Paige, like they played a preseason exhibition game on Sunday, and Paige played like was 100%.
No surprise, like it was an incredibly efficient Paige Becker stat line, but it's just it's just fun. Knowing Paige Becker is about to play basketball again, it's just a very, very fun thing.
Play like elite basketball.
Yeah.
Like she was coming
Jorge State put up a fight, especially for that first quarter. I tweeted, I gave them props. I tagged them in it, so they're like officially can't retweet. I'm like, good, because I want you to see it, because like they went out, they kept it close in the first quarter, and like. There's a lot of teams that'll beat themselves before they walk in there. One of their players had the funniest TikTok talking about everyone else getting ready for Halloween weekend, and I'm about to get crossed up by Paige buckets. I thought that was hysterical.
I saw someone.
She camped 2 threes. I was like, okay, Telexa, like.
Yeah. I saw. Apparently, Paige's first bucket was over.
Yeah, over. I was gonna say that.
Yeah, no, like she knew.
I respect it.
But
I think that is so funny. I love it.
She was real. She was really real for that.
I loved it.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see them play. And yeah, like obviously, like they put up a great fight, but Paige is playing ethical, efficient hoops.
Yeah.
And she is like, I'm excited for the Paige tornado that is coming for this season. So yeah, Jamie, what's your game that you're looking forward to this week?
It's hard. I'm generally a verbose person, and also I'm just a freaking psycho. So like I have games every day I'm watching. I'll keep it shorter than that, I promise. Obviously I'm also excited for South Carolina and NC State. Right. Something I'm really intrigued with at NC State is Caitlin Weimar meshing with the Wolfpack. She was at Boston. She's a 5th-year senior, and she was last year Patriot League Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. You know, when you talk about integrating transfers, it's a lot easier to do so when the rest of your core is stable and you're just getting one person worked in there. And so, you know, NC State lost some key players, but their core is pretty consistent. And so I do think that that's going to be a little bit of an easier transition for them. And I mean, she's 6'4", like she physically is fully prepared to play. And so I'm really intrigued by that. And then obviously seeing, okay, does South Carolina just come out ready to roll because they're frustrated about the way they started that game 1. And then beyond that, I really am looking at a lot of those mid-major kind of matchups. There's so many really great games happening at the mid-major level. I mean, on day 1, you had St. Louis over South Dakota in overtime.
Yeah.
You had the Summit favorite, South Dakota State, over Rice, who's tied for second in the preseason poll in the American League on the road. Those
Rice,
are obviously super exciting. Rice. Sorry.
Right.
It's
in Texas. Don't worry.
The Rice Owls. The Rice Owls. I have a t-shirt from home field. From a mystery box.
Shout out home.
But like today, we're recording Tuesday. So this game will be played. Ohio State has Cleveland State. Destiny Leo, incredible players. So excited to see them go again. Creighton is playing some really great matchups with the mid-majors. They're going to South Dakota State. And so I'm excited for that. Number 21 ranked Creighton Blue Jays, one of the oldest, most experienced teams in the country. They've got 7 of the 11 players on their roster are either seniors or fifth years. 5 of them started their career at Creighton. Like, the consistency there is really unmatched. They've got a couple of players on the mid-major player of the year watch list on South Dakota State, and that's, that comes from her hoop stat. So like, that's super cool to see that. I know that our buddy Calvin Wetzel is huge into like the mid-major scene. So he's one that really covers it well. But Paige Meyer and Brooklyn Meyer, who are not actually related to each other on South Dakota State, both terrific players. And then you've got Drake going to Creighton. And Drake, obviously, a team that I cover a whole lot here in Des Moines. They're a very, very talented team. Pulled out a close one on the road at North Dakota State.
Yeah.
Katie Dinnebier is incredible. If you want to talk ethical hoops, like, she is a true point guard. The state of Iowa has had a surplus of really talented point guards in recent years, and obviously one has gotten a lot of attention, but like this year you've got Katie Dinnebier back at Drake, you have Emily Ryan at Iowa State, you have Maya McDermott at UNI, and then you have Lucy Olson transfer into Iowa. So like to have 4 state schools, well, technically Drake's a private school, but to have 4 D1 schools in the state that have that point guard talent is crazy. So that's going to be super, super fun. And then probably my highlight one beyond my little mid-major rant is Maryland and Duke. I'm really interested in Maryland and Duke. Brenda said after that NCAA tournament game, she said post-up ain't gonna be a problem for us anymore. She hit that portal hard. I'm really interested to see what that team looks like. And then obviously for Duke to get a little bit more of an opportunity to see them in a more high pressure matchup. I want to see a little bit more of Toby. I want to see her get those fouls a little bit under control. The 10 minutes was a result of fouling out in those 10 minutes. Like, let's be real. But she was efficient in the 10 minutes. She was 5-9. So she can definitely do it. And they'll need her for sure against the size that Maryland has. So I'm really fascinated by that. And then because I can't not go crazy talking about a bunch of games, also Baylor going to Oregon, because Oregon? That's a wild roster.
Yeah, and it didn't look too bad in game 1. It's we're still playing. We gotta see it for real. But in comparison to last year, that more than likely last year against any opponent, it would have been a close game. Yep. So the fact that they had a blowout, I'm eye emojis. I ain't saying anything past that yet. I just got some eye emojis towards Oregon.
There could be something there.
I'm intrigued. My eyebrows raised just the slightest bit.
I'm willing to listen.
There's so many. It's so hard to focus on because there's just so many. There was 165 yesterday.
That's so many screens.
There's just so many things, so many questions to be answered and stuff. And there's teams that'll kind of fall off, and there'll be you'll decide, oh, this is the team I really enjoy watching and whatever. But we're still figuring all that out. So especially for
rankings and all that.
Yeah.
I do think the rankings my biggest take is that I think Michigan's going to kind of rise into those rankings. They put up a tough fight against the top school. And I think that gains them a lot of traction with voters. And I mean, we're just here with a 24/7, 365 sport, enjoying our lives and having year-round sport. And I have people from my high school in my DMs being college basketball. So that's I'm just okay, let's make this a Canadian movement. But anyways, great opening day. Obviously, there's more basketball to come tonight. We're recording this on Tuesday. So if you're watching Wednesday morning and you're why didn't they talk about this? It's because it's Tuesday, okay? So thank you all for joining. We'll be back next week with a whole new slate of games to talk about. Maybe some more WNBA coaching hires.
Who knows?
We're getting close to expansion draft time too. So much to talk about. There's literally never a dull moment in women's basketball. So for this episode of the Press Break, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Chelsea. Obviously, Jamie and Tyler, you can follow us on the internet on many different platforms. And obviously keep in tune with Her Hoop Stats. There's so many great podcasts coming out. Calvin and Karina tomorrow, obviously, they'll also be talking about opening day. And I mean, maybe some more Canadian bias will come out, but it's fine. It's fine. Karina, I got you.
Hopefully you didn't get your fill today.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for watching. Join us next week and have a great college basketball opening week.